Hi there, welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to explore the process of creating a very popular motion graphics style, which is the double exposure look, made famous chiefly by the series True Detective. And this is giving the illusion of a double exposure happening on a piece of celluloid, and then just heightening that effect to suggest a narrative or thematic cue to the audience. And I'm going to use some copyright-free, royalty-free assets from the web, and I'll put the links to these assets in the education pack. And obviously that not only gives you links to those resources that I've used, but also can help to give credit to those people that created the assets in the first place. And hopefully this is something you can do and explore in your own work, and hopefully you find it productive. So I'm going to go about creating this effect, and it's going to be a multi-part process where we create the background video that sits within her silhouette, which is almost in essence like giving a sense of her context, her history, her memories, which this effect so rightly and so aptly suggests is that this the internal workings of her mind. And then we're going to use this green screen asset to prep the actress's face and body, and then we're going to use some post-processing effects just to build up the overall sense that this is being filmed with a lens through a kind of filtered retrospective kind of look. So let's start with prepping the assets, which is the background that sits within her head and her memories, and the green screen asset itself. So I'm going to start a new project. I'm just going to save this one I'm in, just to be sure. I'm going to start a new project, and here we go. So the first thing I'm going to focus on is bringing the assets into After Effects. So I'm right-clicking inside the project window, import file, and I'm going to find the assets that I'm going to use. I have two videos, a grunge texture, and a photograph. And they're all imported in 4 files in essence that make up this file. We've got the original green screen footage. We have a grayscale grunge asset. Ooh, we have a windmill asset, or a wind turbine asset. And then we have this kind of background field asset. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a new composition, and I'm going to call this final. So this is going to be my final comp. I'm going to make it 25 frames per second, which it already is here. Look, frame rate 25. I'm going to make it 10 seconds long. And I've intentionally put in a bespoke width and height. And in order to do this, you need to unlock the aspect ratio just here. And I'm trying to achieve this 2:3:5 ratio here. In other words, CinemaScope. But I've started with a 1920 by 1080 preset. So HD 1080p 25, just here. I've unlocked this aspect ratio, and then I can type 818. And what that'll do is give me that 2:3:5 ratio. Let's press OK. And there's my final composition all ready with 10 seconds long, no layers just as yet. But it's got this CinemaScope width to it, very much akin to large production value cinema production, but also a lot of the kind of HBO quality, inverted commas, quality television content as well. So that's my first composition prepped, and you can see that composition in the project window. Right, next thing I'm going to do is going to build my background, the memory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this windmill into this final comp. There you go. And I'm also going to drag this background image into the comp. And you'll see that my background photograph fills the most of this composition here, but I only want it to fill an area, so that's not too bad. And then I've got this moving shot of a wind turbine that I'm going to extract out and somehow composite into this background footage. But I want these to have their own composition, these two layers. And I want them to have their own composition with their own layers and their own timeline, so I can adjust them separately but then place them within this final composition. So to do that, I'm selecting both of them with Shift and clicking both. I'm going to go Layer, Pre-Compose. I'm going to call this Memory. I'm going to move all attributes and press OK. And what you'll see now, look, is that composition, or those layers, seem to be still there, but they're there within this this pre-composition here, within the final. And you can see I now have two compositions in my project window. If I double click on this memory, it now takes me to those two layers once more, but it takes me into a new composition. And whatever work I do in this composition will then impact and affect the same instance of this composition inside this final composition. So in essence, I'm creating a sub-composition. So this is where I'm going to focus on the memory. So first off, I've got my windmill footage and the layer selected. I'm going to use a simple keying, and I'm going to do a chroma key of that blue sky. So I'm going to use key light. Come to the screen color here, and I'm just going to select the kind of average blue. I'm just going to drag down. There we go. And that's got rid of most of it. Now let's check how good that is. I'm going to change it from final result to screen matte. And I can see most of the pixels I want to keep are white, in other words, on. And I want these other pixels to be black. So I'm just going to push the gain a bit. There we go. I'm going to come into my screen matte options to allow me to adjust this view I'm seeing here. I'm just going to push the white by taking the clip white value to the left, just to get rid of any grey. And I'm just going to push the black a tiny bit just to make sure. There we go. Let's go back to final result. And we have a keyed asset. It's a little bit crunchy. There was a black outline around it, but let's just soften that a little bit with shrink and grow and softness here. So I'm just going to come to the softness control, put in 2 pixels, maybe 3, just to soften that transition. And maybe I could shrink it a tiny bit just to see if I can get rid of some of that black line around the edge. And I think a combination of softness and the shrink and grow might help me just throttle back that effect of a black line a little bit more. And because it's going quite far back in the scene, I don't mind a little bit of edge to edge softness in there. Okay, so I can see on my blades as they turn around. Now with the keying done, I'm going to come with this layer still selected down here, which is important. I'm going to click down on here and get rectangle tool. And I'm just going to crop out the rest of this footage, make it subtract. And that's subtracted that section. And then I'm just going to open up the mask options. I'm just going to feather the bottom of that edge. And this is why I made my mask slightly bigger at the left and right than I actually needed, so I could feather the bottom there. So let's move this up to where I want it here. Say there. It's looking good. Now it needs a little bit more finishing, but you can see by feathering the bottom there, it's helped to transition into this dust bowl kind of look here. Just going to feather it maybe a bit more. And if I double click on my mask, I can fine tune that transition like so. Just don't want any of the line of the mountain behind it showing through, because that would give away the illusion. There we go. So that's doing a pretty good job. The only problem is that the light source is on the right hand side here, look, and the light source on this one is on the left hand side. So it might pay just to flip this layer, just so the lighting direction makes sense. So I'm going to go Effect, I'm going to Layer, Transform, and I'm going to flip horizontal, and then bring that back into position like so, and that makes a lot more sense in terms of the lighting direction of our scene. go. And might have been a little bit strong on but we'll come back to that. Now it just needs color adjusting. So I'm going to show you a rough and ready way of doing this. Selecting my windmill. I'm going to go Effect, Color Correction, and I'm going to tint it. In other words, change its black and white point to match something in the scene. So I'm going to pick the black point look and drag around in the area around here. And then my white point, I'm going to take off something that's a bit more keeping with what we're seeing here. It's kind of this cooler colour. And it might be that it's just milked it back a bit too much, so let's go back. I'm going to toggle the mask visualization off so it's not in my way. And let's try picking something darker so it's nearly there, look. So let's get a mid-tone colour. It's right in this dust bowl area here, so there we go. And then we can dial in the amount of tint until we're kind of happy. What we're seeing is appropriate. That seems a bit better now. There we go. I think I am going to throttle back on that shrink and grow. Let's go -1. Let's bring some of that back. That's better. And let's just take the softness down a bit. Yeah, there we go. So let's see where we've come from. Let's turn the tint off. Let's turn the key light off. And let's just check our mask. I think I've gone too far to the right on that. Not far enough. There we go. You can see that line I was getting there from the feathering. And I'm just going to take the feather down a little bit. I think it's a bit too much. There we go. And there's our composition put together. Like so. We've created our own little scene. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to punch the saturation a little bit because I want it to be a little bit more magical. So I'm going to do a new adjustment layer. We'll call this saturation because labeling is our friend. Effect, color correction, hue and saturation. I'm just going to push the saturation just a little bit, which might look a bit too rich on its own here. Once we get back into the other part of the sequence, it might make a bit more sense, but at least it's on its own adjustment layer so we can tweak it. I'm going to come through and press return on each one of these layers and clearly label them so I know what they are. Okay, so that's that composition finished with, and whatever changes I've made in here should now populate through to here, look, in the final one, because this is where we created the pre-comp from. And because this pre-comp that we've been working within is inside this composition as well, any updates we've made here have updated this final one. So there we go. Good. One last thing to prep before we finish this part is to prep our female protagonist. So I'm going to drag the green screen footage that has her in it to the layer, our main layer here. And there we go. And I like the point, and you'll notice that the footage is much longer than my 10-second composition. So first off, there's a point in which this footage in which I double click it, look, and bring it down. There's a point at which it's quite a dramatic move where she takes her hair down to her head, looks quite pensive there, and then takes a hand up. I want to start it with the hand up and then it comes down so it's more thoughtful. So I want to change the performance between 10 and 8 seconds, or 10 to kind of, yeah. So what I'm going to do is firstly, I'm going to flip the time of this footage. So I'm going to go layer, time reverse. So it's playing the other way. So you can see it's now playing in that flipped manner. And I'm going to leave my timer all at the beginning, and I'm just going to drag along till the hand is in that starting position, ready to come down to be pensive, look. So I'm going to start with the hand at the top, like so. And then it comes down. So I'm going to start, hand up there. I'm going to press S for scale, just to scale the edges of this video in, like that. I think that's going to work nicely. Maybe we're going to have to scale it up a bit because of this hard edge here. So I wonder if I can get away with it. There. Let's bring that down. Like so. Okay. Just going to bring pensive. Maybe we lose the hand now. So we are going to have to scale it in to get more of the performance. It might be that I have to go slightly earlier. So say from there. So I'm going to drag my layer that far in. There we go. From there we can go, look, down, pensive. But the problem is that only really takes, that movement only really takes about 3 seconds. So with that in mind, not only am I going to time reverse this like I've done so it plays the other way, I'm now going to go layer, time, enable time remapping, and it puts this initial keyframe in at the beginning. And I'm going to time remap it. So I'm going to click a stopwatch or diamond here to mark that first position there. I'm going to get to where I want it to kind of stop. It's like 4 seconds there. Perhaps, or maybe 5. Let's go to 5. Let's make a diamond there. So basically this is going from its current position in time to this position in time at normal speed. But if I was to double the distance between these two keyframes, I'm basically making it twice as slow. So there we go. If I drag this along to 10 seconds, this should now slow down that movement. So we'll just let that through. I'm just going to put my quality on half or auto so it matches my resolution or my magnification. There we go. So that's slowing that movement down. And in order to get better quality slow motion, you'll notice that we've got these toggles here and these toggles here. And I want to toggle frame blending on and toggle different types of frame blending. So you notice that first option on the column gives me like a blurred frames or blurred instances to make that smoother. But if we go to the next option toggle, we got a frame interpolation option where the computer intelligently creates and interpolates the missing frames in between. So because we made it twice as long or twice as slow, what's happened is those frames aren't there to make that a smooth motion. So hence it's a bit stuttery if we don't have this turned on. But by toggling through these different modes here, look, to this option here and having this on for the whole composition, we're now starting to get a much smoother, once this preview's back, slow motion. Like so. Without it, it's going to be a bit stuttery, look. So we can toggle this on and off. I'm going to toggle it off for now so we can speed up our workflow a bit because it takes a little bit extra time to render. But with that in mind now, we can chroma key this green background out. So let's call this layer GS for green screen. Effect, keying, and we're going to use key light once more. It's a bit of a keying exercise this. And I'm just going to key out this area. Let's look at our screen matte once more. Just going to come to my screen matte and push the white in a bit, like so. I'm keeping the subtle grey around the edges, look. Be very cautious not to push the white too far. I don't want to push the black too far either. There we go. I think that might do the job for us. Let's just throttle that white back a little bit, just to bring some of that finer edge detail back. Possibly push the gain a tiny bit. I think that might do the job. Got a little bit of artifacting here where the black's not quite gone far enough. It's just going to be a little bit of back and forth. I might put some screen softness in there just to make sure we don't get any too much kind of artifacting. Let's change this back to final result. And we have our key. We have our green screened protagonist. So there we go. So you can see now, green screen on one layer over the top of our background. And I'm going to turn the speakers off because we don't want the audio from either set of assets. And that's the beginnings of our setup. It might look nothing like it because we're way off, but we've prepped our protagonist so she has a clear alpha channel, a beginning and an end, an edge and not an edge. So we've removed the background so we can isolate her. And then we've got this background prepped, ready to be her internal memories. So in the next stages, what we're going to do is combine these two together and use this as a cookie cutter to cut a protagonist size shape out of this background so we can start to build this effect of an internalized double exposure memory. Thank you.